All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for our webinar today. My name's Stephanie Baskerville. I am the content writer here at ProServe IT, and I'm going to be your webinar co-host today. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar entitled A Day in the Life Using Microsoft Teams Automation to Make Work Easier. We've got a lot of great content for you, and it is my privilege to introduce you to the person who is going to take us through it all today. Keith Vivekananda is one of ProServe IT's amazing solutions architects, and he's got a specialization in digital transformation. And Keith has spent 14 years in the IT industry, with 4 of those years here at ProServe IT. And he's always had a genuine love of technology and its limitless possibilities, especially with what technology can do for humanity. With particular expertise in Office 365, the Power Platform of Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automation, and various collaboration tools like SharePoint, Teams, and Dynamics 365, Keith truly has a fascination with how technology can help improve the way people work together. So welcome, Keith. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. Great introduction there.
Oh, thank you very much. All right. Before we get started, folks, I would like to point out to you, of course, that if you have questions throughout this webinar, you can feel free to use that questions tab in the GoToWebinar platform. We will be keeping this somewhat informal today, so I will be monitoring that window throughout Keith's presentation, and I will be happy to read out those questions as they come in or during more of the formal Q&A section of today's session. So, please feel free, don't be shy. You can use that tab as many times as you need to, and we will definitely get those questions answered for you today. So this webinar is kind of our first actually in our What's Next webinar series that we're going to be holding over the next few weeks. And it's kind of a chance for you to see the art of the possible when it comes to the tools that you've implemented over the past few weeks of working remotely. You may have spun up Teams in your organization as a collaboration tool so that your remote working employees could have a place to work on documents together or host meetings or chat with their coworkers or what have you. But the question is, now what? And what can you do now that you've got Teams in place? And how can you take your Teams investment to the next level and ensure that you're getting that maximum ROI? Well, that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Keith to start showing us how Teams can be automated as a way to use it to its fullest. So Keith, the mic is all yours.
All right, thank you, Steph. So very quickly, I'm just going to go through the agenda just to see what we're getting ourselves into. So today we're going to talk about Power Automation and also Microsoft Teams and how they kind of connect together. These are all applications that are available in your Office 365 / Microsoft Teams environments. So this is a great, we're not going to go through a how-to of how this works or how we created it. This is more of a business side conversation and understanding what can be done and providing some examples during the demonstration like Steph just mentioned. So we're going to kind of cover a few things here. We're going to talk about the opportunity and some of the positives of what we're kind of going through right now and where we can kind of take where we are currently and improve on some of the things that we're doing using the help of Power Automate and Teams. And then we're going to show you how that works after getting a bit more context by going through a demo and then talk about what next steps look like. And then like Steph mentioned, you guys can ask us questions during in the chat box in the questions box in GoToMeeting, but we will also answer some at the end too as well. So let's talk about the opportunity. As we all know, we're in a very interesting time right now. A lot of us have kind of been pushed to change the way that we work. Some of us have been working remotely. Just to give you a bit of context and insight in how ProServe IT worked, we've always been remote. Even though we do have a office here in Mississauga, Ontario, a main office, we'll go in once in a while, but most of our work is done remotely with each other. and we've already been on Teams for a while. But what has happened recently, everyone that hasn't been working remotely has been pushed into either Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, however you work. We've all had to bring our documents into the cloud and start working from there. So the other side of this is a lot of not all organizations or all businesses, but we've kind of had to change the way we work from what has become our priorities now. So a lot of businesses have some free time to actually rethink the way that they work internally and move around their processes. So it's more about not focusing on the customers, but some internal changes that can be made, and more about the strategic thinking that's going on. And I would argue that this is a great time to make some of those changes. Now, whenever businesses talk about changes, a lot of people internally there's a lot of fear around that. And that's completely fair and it makes sense. However, what businesses and organizations are starting to understand is we need to start making agile changes. So whatever we wanted 6 years ago might not be the same thing as what we want right now. And the reason why I bring that up is because, changes that usually take 6 years of planning, recently we've been seeing the change that a lot of people have been making those changes on the fly, or within the next 6 weeks instead of taking 6 years to plan. Now, how do you achieve that? Once again, that's the agile way of thinking, and this is where you can break up a bigger problem into smaller sized changes. And what this allows us to do is it's a lot more manageable from a human aspect. Humans are adverse to change, so being able to slowly change things over time and learning from those small changes over time too as well. Finally, I really want to capture this. Automation is not about replacing everything. Whenever I speak about automation, or even general, if you see it on the news, robots, anything with the word robot, robotic, automation, it's not about replacing every single aspect of the chain or the process. What this does is it takes out all the repetitive tasks, and it allows us to use our strengths of the more human aspects of it. So this could be as simple as the empathy that we can provide to our customers when it's customer service. At this time, automation is not looking to replace that, and it wouldn't be a good idea to replace that, because human empathy is a huge skill, especially during the sales process and the customer service process and everyday process too as well. So having said that, let's take a look at where some of you might be, and taking a look at some of the pain points that a lot of people get when in their daily workflow. And when I mean daily workflow, it's your process, your task, or whatever you do, your step-by-step process that you usually go through. So right now you currently might be, like Steph mentioned, a lot of us are in Microsoft Teams. For this example, we're using Microsoft Teams because it's part of the Microsoft ecosystem and we are the most familiar with that. But as far as where you guys are right now, it's usually probably around, you might have done some collaboration here and there. You guys are uploading documents, at least talking with each other and getting stuff done. Now, as far as that goes, the repetitive tasks that people do on the daily might be a pain point for a lot of people, and I'm talking about manual workflows too here. Using the manual for workflows as in an approval chain. So if I were to send out a document to another person, it might be through email, and it's as an attachment, and once that person approves, maybe it has to go to another person. And imagine doing this maybe, it might be every time I do a quote, which might be every day, might be 3 to 4 every day, might be once a week if it's a weekend report that I have to send out, or maybe monthly So those are the repetitive tasks that take a lot of drain out of us. It could be as simple as sending a document. It could be as easy as maybe copying and paste a customer's email into our CRM or something like that. So what we want to do is find out different ways we can find out different ways we can automate some of these repetitive tasks and manual workflows. And like I mentioned, keeping our email inboxes clean as possible. I've seen many organizations complain about how a lot of their communications happen in their email. Thankfully, we've brought that out and brought it into Teams, but what about the attachments and sending attachments? And going in from different multiple applications, going from Teams, Outlook, and then going into the CRM, which might be Salesforce, going into Dynamics, and then going back into another email and sending that out. So you can kind of you can see where we're using multiple applications and then doing it through different multiple emails. Finally, I would say this is getting pretty rare, but it's still applicable. At the bottom left-hand corner here, all the things I need are at the office. So there are a lot of organizations, especially with compliance issues that they run into. There's a lot of organizations, especially nonprofit, that still have paper-based communication and paper-based documents. So that's a significant pain point that we've seen here too as well. So let's talk about, before we get into how we can solve these things, a bit more context of the Power family. I'll kind of breeze through this very quickly because I don't want to get too technical here. But within the Power family, we're going to be talking about Power Automate, which is the third one here. But the Power family is more about taking the data that we have and finding a way to make it more friendly. Instead of looking through Excel sheets all day, or even Word documents, there's different ways we can work through this data by connecting to that data too as well. And it doesn't have to be the Microsoft ecosystem to do that. But the very first thing is Power BI on the left-hand side. That's your business analytics. That's your charts. So think of it as a prettier version of Excel. Then we have Power Apps, which is your application development. This allows us to do very little coding, sometimes even no coding at all, to get applications that are very mobile friendly, device friendly, and be able to create these very quickly too as well, so we can get them to market very soon and use the Office 365 ecosystem. Power Automate is your workflows and your automation, which we will show in a bit. And then finally, Power Virtual Agents is a new service that's your bot creation. So you can actually create bots, very smart and intelligent bots that can first do some tasks, but also take questions. You can be in your Microsoft team. You can create some bots to automatically do some vacation time management too as well. We actually have a bunch of webinars on proserveit.com, our website. You can search us there. There's a few webinars on some of these topics too as well. But the main focus for this is Microsoft Teams and Power Automate. So before we close up this context behind the Power family, this is the connectors. So the actual way to connect from Teams to some other applications to do things, what I said about we go from one application to another to make some changes. Why not just do it in Microsoft Teams? The way we can do that is by having these connectors, and these are all made by Microsoft and in collaboration with these other applications. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is not even close to what's available. I think there was 280 the last time I checked. Some of them are included, some of them are premium connectors. I won't go too much into licensing behind the Power platform and the connectors. Please check with your licensing advisor for that. But you could see that here, it's not only Microsoft Office products, but connecting into, let's say, Facebook. We see Instagram here too as well, Gmail, Google Calendar. I mean, these are even direct competitors to some of Microsoft's products, but we can make those connections to other products too as well. So if you guys are doing your graphic design projects in Basecamp, which I've seen before, you can connect that and grab some information, or maybe post stuff, or anytime that's something's done in there, you can automatically do something on this end in Office. So that's what the connectors are. So
Keith, sorry, before you go on here, we've got a question from Tim. He's asking, what if I don't see the application I'm using right now, or what if it's not on the list?
that's actually a good question. So there's actually a specific connector where we can create a custom API connection. So if you do not see it in here in the 280 list, which is completely fair, Microsoft is continuing to build this out for the most common asks. So one way is you can, ask for more. There is like a good community for Microsoft where they encourage community crowdsourcing. So you can definitely ask for that, and if it's a big enough ask, they'll make that connection. However, if that is something where it's more of a an in-house application, something that's legacy, or maybe it's using a SQL database, or there's many custom ways where they allow you to make those connections as a developer. And once you have that connection, you can create your own calls and everything. So that is available there too as well. All right. So do we have any questions, Steph? Anything to do with the Power Platform before we get into the next slides?
Not at this time, Keith, but if something comes up, I'll definitely keep you informed.
All right, so let's get into the demonstration. Now, I want to take this more in the day in the life of, and I've chosen sales. I think sales is probably the easiest to understand without getting too technical within the abbreviations or with certain terms. So I'm going to pretend I'm Megan, who is a salesperson at Contoso. This person, she's just going to go in, create a quote. This is her daily work. She goes, creates a quote, works on it, and sends it off for approval. So I'm going to kind of start with this as a workflow. It's very simple and straightforward and easy to understand. And I want to show you how we can do this all within Teams, even though we leverage some of the other products in Office 365, but it's all within Teams. All right, so first of all, Steph, I just want to make sure that we see this Microsoft Teams on the screen here.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, perfect. So this might be familiar for a lot of people if you guys have Microsoft Teams. I won't go too in depth into the features or anything. We do have, once again, I'm going to plug ourselves here. If you go to proserveit.com, we do have a lot of webinars around Microsoft Teams and how you can utilize some of the features. But as far as a context goes here, this is my example demo tenant, so it doesn't have a lot of information in here. But the key feature here is that this is actually the web version. You can access this from anywhere, any browser, but of course it acts the same way as the downloaded Windows version 2 as well, which I always recommend because it has notifications and it's real time. So I'm going to go into the sales team here, and I'm going to create a quote. So actually, before I click new here, so just to explain it here, this is actually a tab I created in Microsoft Teams for this specific sales team. And this tab is actually from a SharePoint list. I won't get too much into the technical, but it was something that was very quick to create. And I just want to show, first of all, that Microsoft Teams is a great product because it's sort of different from older products where everything was sorted by department or etc. But the good thing about sales team, even though it says sales team, I can bring in multiple different type of people from different departments. So this group can be, everyone on sales, but it could also be people on the manufacturing side too as well. So the reason why I bring this up is those people in manufacturing might not know the sales process, but that's not the point. They don't need to know the sales process to come into here and get work done. Now, what you're looking at here is an easier to understand format where I don't have to enter enter information, like too much information, or know the structure of a sales quote. But what we're going to see is the automation of creating the document on the fly by just entering a bit of information. So I'm going to click on new here at the top. That's like adding a new item to the SharePoint list on the back end. So let's say test quote for now. And let's make up let's use ProServe IT as a company name. And I will, let's use a fake name again. The shipping method here, let's use Express. So this is all some basic info. Before I actually fill it out, I'm going to click on, let's save this for now. What it does in the background, it creates based off of the template, and I'm going to click on files here to show you the template because I did miss that. I kind of built out the folders here and made a folder structure for that. So click on template here and then click on the parts quote template. So right now it's going to be blank because it is a template, but you can see right here, these fields, the name, the company name, the shipping method is empty, the quotation prepared by whoever created it, that's empty. There's a lot of fields that are empty right now. But since I filled it out in that other SharePoint list, which is in Microsoft Teams, you saw that I filled out some of this information. I could go ahead and really build out this form, and it has that flexibility to populate every single thing. But of course, for this demo, we don't want to get too detailed with that. But we are able to create and populate all this information. So I'm going to close this up. Sorry, and just a reminder, this is just a regular Word document. So I'm going to close this up, and let's see if it is already done. If not, I might have to refresh it. Okay, there it is. So this was created about a minute ago. So I'm going to click on this. It's a Word document. And you can see here, actually the invoice number is 6. Of course, we can edit this. But Bill Bastian at ProServe IT. If we had an address field over there on the SharePoint list, it would have filled that too as well. I didn't add that. But you can see the shipping method is here. The quotation was prepared by Megan. This was automatically, I didn't have to type anything out. This was automatically detected that, hey, Megan's filling this out, or sorry, Megan filled out the list item, so let's populate it with this, right? So of course, this is not enough information, right? I actually have to go in, so I'm gonna click on edit. And this is going back to the automation and my theory, not really my theory, but what I like to say about automation is we're not trying to fill out every single step. I mean, things like discount, going back to the sales process, there's so much context. Even if we try and put that into the automation pool and help the automation understand what constitutes or what allows for a discount, there's still so much context. Once again, being in sales, it's more about the empathy and understanding when a discount is required. That's something only I can do because I have the context. So I'm not looking to automate every single thing as an example. For this example, I'm just going to, let's go with 55,000 of item 546. Once again, if we really want to build out this, we can automate a lot of this. Unit price, let's say $2, 110,000. And then finally, the total is 110,000. Okay, so I think that's it. Steph, I think my math is correct, right? 55 times 110. Yeah, that's correct. Okay,
I was going to say, you don't want to ask me.
yeah,
I'm just a writer.
so 110,000. I'm gonna close this up. I'm gonna close it up. And let's actually go back here into the slide. So we've created the quote, we worked on it, the human aspect. I mean, this is just an example of a human aspect of it. And next, we're gonna have to send it off for approval. So I'm gonna go back. Now I'm gonna actually open this up in SharePoint for a second, and just to give you guys a bit of context and understanding, Microsoft Teams is actually built on top of SharePoint and Office 365. Microsoft Teams is just the face of everything, and it kind of makes it easier for us to work within the Office 365 ecosystem. But all the files that you upload are actually in SharePoint. So I'm gonna open this up in SharePoint here. And there's my quote here. And the reason why I'm doing this in SharePoint is because I want to fill in a bit more information. So I'm going to click on Automate here, and I'm going to start my Power Automate, and I want to get approval. So I'm going to click on Quote Approval here. And part of this approval that we go through is there's a certain threshold or dollar amount. So in this case, if it's $100,000 or more, sorry, if it's $100,000 or less, it could be approved by anyone that's on my team as a colleague or as an example. If it's over 100,000, it goes directly up to my boss for approval. That's just to kind of show you that you can put logic into this. And right now, if you can see, I'm doing it manually, 110,000. You can collect as much information as possible in here. We can create, you can create those fields, but I mean, we have access to our document. We can even automate that to grab information specifically from the quote field, or sorry, the total price field within that Word document. We could even go as far as automating that too as well, right? So dollar amount, I'm just gonna run this flow and let that happen. So yeah, that's the start of the approval, and we're sending it off for approval. So we don't have to do anything on our end. I don't have to communicate to anyone. But before we get into the next part of the demo, do we have any questions, Steph?
Yeah, we've got a question here from Erica. She's asking, can the same sort of automation be done in Dynamics 365? I'm assuming she means as opposed to SharePoint.
Yeah, that's actually a good question too as well. So just reminding everyone that this is within Power Automate works not only with Teams, but within Office 365 products as well. So what I mean by that is we can do tasks anywhere. I know with the connectors we mentioned, you can do it with Salesforce, Instagram, you know, naming a whole bunch of other products that are not Microsoft. But within the Office 365 and Microsoft ecosystem, specifically things like SharePoint, Dynamics, there's a lot more you can do internally. So that's a great example, because what if we used Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365 CRM to take the information, like, you know, the address of the customer and the you know, like the actual quote items and the products that we created the quote in Dynamics, we can also create a quote from that and do a Power Automate and bring that final document, which you'll see in a bit, into Teams too as well. So there's many ways we can work with this and with many different applications, and it works best, you know, being fully transparent, it's a Microsoft product, and it's always going to work best within that ecosystem. Is there any other questions there, Steph?
Yeah, we do have a quick question from Heather. She's just wondering if we could explain the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm not sure if that's going to kind of derail this conversation. We may want to keep that until a little bit later, but just thought I'd put it out there.
Sure, very quickly, I'll go through that very quick. So there's 3 different products when it comes to collaboration. We have OneDrive, we have SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. So OneDrive, I like to think of that as my personal work documents. So whenever I'm working on a document, I'll share it in OneDrive. And what this allows me to do I mean, it's not a good example right now, especially the situation we're in right now. But if I'm here at home, I could be working on my desktop, I could be working on my laptop, maybe on the couch or in a different room. And then whenever I go outside to a client or when I go into work, when all this is done, it's always going to have the latest copy and it's going to sync it. But that's only for my personal use. I'll put it into Microsoft Teams next if I want other people to collaborate on it. So I'll put the document and I'm working on it very dynamically and I need changes very quickly. So if you and I, Steph, or even you and I, Heather, if we're working on a document together for the next 3 days, I would put it in Microsoft Teams because it's a daily thing. Now, SharePoint is usually when I put it into a long-term solution. So meaning if it's a quote and it needs to stay there forever, and I'm only accessing it maybe like once a month, or it's more for archival purposes, it's more of a repository, that's the difference there. SharePoint is more of like long-term storage and accessing it once in a while. Teams is more like working on it day to day with someone else. And then finally, OneDrive, once again, is being able to access it from anywhere for your personal work items. Any other questions there, Steph? Hopefully that answered that one.
Yeah, Heather, if that didn't answer it, you can ask a follow-up question for sure. There's a question from Brian, and Brian, I may need you to sort of go back on this a little bit. He's asking, can you use text values versus numbers?
Yes.
I'm not, okay.
Yeah, you can use text values, you can use multi-line text values, you can use numbers, choices too as well. There's a long list of things that you can definitely use this with when it comes to that example that we just did. All right,
Awesome.
so Steph, is it all right if I park the rest of the questions for a next little gap? All right.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's focus on the next side of it. Let's go into the management side. So I'm going to pretend to be manager today. And all I need to do, because it's been sent to me for approval, remember, because it's $110,000, it goes over that threshold. It actually sends me directly a message. And I'm going to have to take a quick look at the quote, see if there's anything, funny or not. If it's good to go, we approve it. Usually I would have to, message Megan and say, hey, I'm done approving of it. But once we finalize it, we usually send it off as a PDF, not a Word document, because we don't want anyone to edit it on that side, but we send it out as a PDF because that's like a finalized document. I guess I also forgot to mention here, if we were talking about like the sales side of it and talking about Megan's side of things, usually if I were to finish off a document, I would have to send a message. Even within Microsoft Teams, I would have to send a message to my manager saying, hey, can you approve of this? And even if we're going further back, if this was an email situation and we didn't have Teams or we weren't using Teams, we would have to send it in an email. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but when we talk about Microsoft Teams, and you'll see it in a second, that's like the latest version of that document, and it's one single source of truth when it comes to documentation. So I'm going to flip over to the other side here, and what I mean by that is now I'm logged in as myself here, and I am going to be the manager. So I got a message here on the left-hand side, you'll see. So I'm going to click on this, and I got something from Flowbot. So anytime there's a approval, I can allow Flowbot to send messages for me based on some actions. And here, I created this card within Flow to sort of tell me, when was this created, what is the link to the document, and very simple, I can approve or reject and give a comment why. So I'm actually going to click this link, and it's going to open up the quote in Word Online. If I wanted, I can actually open this up in the desktop app as well and do some more changes, etc. But this is kind of what I meant. So let's say 2 weeks down the road, I actually go into this document. You know, it was a late approval. I was on vacation for 2 weeks. Megan in the background, she doesn't have to send me a new attachment if she makes changes. While I've been on vacation for the 2 weeks, Megan can make changes to to this document, and the link that we're working on right now, the huge advantage here is that that's a live document, and she can make those changes on the fly, and that will be reflected in this document. So you can see from the automation, it does create a lot of, it decreases the amount of emails in my inbox because I don't have to worry about having the latest version or the latest attachment. And of course, with approvals, it's not just 1 or 2 people, we can have multiple people. So if this is an approval chain, she can make changes, I can make changes. If I have to send this over, maybe if it's $1 million, it has to go to my boss next, then as part of that approval chain, I can make changes to this document and it will go back to as well. Or let's say, for example, you know, if I want to make a change right now because there's something that she's missing, then I can approve this, but message in the comment that I've changed this. Here, Megan, this is the latest copy, so I don't have to resend another attachment. So for now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This looks great. This is a good quote. So I'm going to close this up. I'm going to approve on it, but I do want to mention that, you know, it looks good. Make sure we also add this to the other quote we have out to that. Okay, so I'm going to submit that. Okay, takes a bit there. And that's where it finalizes everything on my end. As you guys can see, I didn't have to open up a Outlook, or I didn't have to open up Word, the actual, sorry, I didn't have to download the attachment. I didn't have to open it up in my Microsoft Word. It already does everything in my browser here, or it opens up directly in your Microsoft Teams client too as well. But it's already been done. So I'm going to switch over back into Megan's, and there's actually a mention here. So we'll go back into Teams and we'll go to General. You can see the one here, and I've actually been tagged here right at the bottom. So I'm going to open this up. This is fully customizable. I just kind of randomly did this, but I can see that that sales quote was approved, and the outcome was it's been approved comment. Looks good. Make sure we also add this to the other quote we have out to them. Okay, that's perfect. All right, so that worked. Now that I'm back as Megan, I did mention one more thing we added to the workflow, if you guys remember, and that was creating a PDF version. So I'm going to go back and, oops, wrong one. Go back into files. You guys remember how I set it up like this. So the template is the original template, the working document, and then a final folder. So let's go into final, and you can see there's a PDF version of this. So I'm going to open it up, and it's done. All that we have to do is get it over to the client, however we need to do. Maybe we need to send it by email, so I'll send it by email. Or if you guys already have your clients inside your Microsoft Teams, maybe this folder here, the final folder that you see here, maybe that's only shared to your clients. There's many ways you can definitely do that, but you can see that everything we did just took a matter of a couple of seconds. It really helps minimize some of the things that we do, right? All right, so that's pretty much for the demo there. Before we get into the next steps, I want to see if anyone had any questions very quickly before we go to the next steps.
Yes, we did have one question, which kind of goes into this from Michael. Michael's asking, can you have multiple approvals within the one document? For example, like if you're onboarding and then going to the first manager, then IT, then security, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you can, and it can be done in the same flow and the same process. So if you have, and the way I like to think of it is one flow should be for one business process. And one business process could have multiple people in there, multiple different approval styles, different types of logic too as well. You can have that kind of that kind of branching out too as well. And it has that flexibility to do that. And on top of that, if one business process relies on another business process, you can also um, go through that business process and call another business process while the other one waits or maybe does something at the same time. So you can see how it can kind of get very, you can see how very flexible it is and how complex it can get. And it is all possible with Flow. Hopefully that answers.
Awesome. Yeah, Michael, if that didn't answer the question, please ask a follow-up question for sure. We've got another question from Kelly actually asking kind of about the reporting side of things. So she's asking, of the 110,000 that has been quoted,
Yeah.
would teams be able to pull that value into a sort of report of some kind?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be directly done in Teams, but what we have set up here, I've seen it, shown it in another demo. If you go into the Microsoft Teams demo we have on ProServe IT, but going back to the Power Family, another application that we use within the Power Family is called Power BI. And I have a Power BI tab in here, which maybe once it's done its work, that quote goes into a PDF format and also records it somewhere else, maybe a SharePoint list. And we use that SharePoint list to, populate the chart that we're looking on the screen, looking at on the screen here. So as an example, I brought this in here because this is a piece of information that we're always looking at. And I don't want to log into Power BI to do that every single time or open up a new window. I just want it in my tabs. But yes, definitely we can add that to the workflow where it collects that information and puts it somewhere where Power BI can read it. Anything else there, Steph, or we can?
I think I'll save the other questions until the end. I know we're just going to jump into the next steps here, and I know we're kind of getting to we're approaching the 3 o'clock hour. So
Okay.
Let's chat next steps first.
All right. So let's talk about next steps. So how do you get from, you guys are probably inspired, but and taking a look at different scenarios. I'm going to speak about the concept of how we can, well, at least this is how we do it and what we've seen with other organizations that we work with. And going back to it, it's the whole agile process behind it. So maybe I can go back to the first slide here. So remembering these things right now is great, but making the agile changes. I mentioned that, hey, you can go through many business processes in a enterprise level, even a small business or a medium-sized business. There's a lot of processes. There might be 20, 30, 40, 50 processes. It's not all about going through all of them and creating a requirements document and creating so much planning behind that. Agile is about taking one of those processes, making sure it's defined, first of all, and then creating like a Visio chart or like a flow chart. Like, after this step happens, where does it go in this flow chart? Does it go to this person? And then if this happens, it could fork off into another person. So just kind of capturing that information one by one, and taking that business process and then going into flow and trying to recreate that. During that digitization as well, what we've seen happen is a lot of organizations and teams are starting to align better with each other because they know their responsibilities too as well. And this is not only something that happens at the small business level, but it happens at the enterprise level too as well. Everyone currently has their own way of working and the responsibilities that they have during the process, but sometimes certain people don't understand the process. So this is going to help with onboarding people onto a new way of that you guys are working, but also make sure that you're getting that same consistent output because of how automated it is and how easy it is to go through this process, right? So as a next step, I would say if you guys are really going to start looking into this, is definitely, first of all, get into Microsoft Teams if you can, and then take a look at your most, it doesn't have to be your biggest process, but something small. Start off very small as like a pilot. We call it a pilot or a proof of concept. And see if you can automate it somehow. Find out the patterns, create a flow chart and understand it yourself first. And once again, I'm going to mention again, that's probably the most important one because a lot of people haven't defined that yet. But once you have that, that's when you can actually go into flow and start recreating that. And then once you've learned your lessons, go on to the next one and keep doing that. And we've helped a lot of organizations kind of understand that. And the key thing behind that is always prioritizing something that has a big impact, but doesn't take too long to recreate or to understand, right? So once again, find out your flow of that business process and prioritize based on the complexity slash how long it'll take to actually do it. That's what we call a quick win. And then finally keep repeating that process, right? So that's how we usually do it. So when it comes to how we do it, we've seen it done in many ways. That's sort of like the overall structure. So we do have a few packages. Steph, were you going to go through this or?
You can go through it if you want,
Okay,
Keith.
sure. So we have 3 different offerings here. We have the Smart, Smart Plus, Smart Elite. It really depends on how you see your flows. We help you with all whatever I just kind of mentioned and how we do it. If you guys are, definitely try it out yourself. If you see that, you might not have the time or you want the expertise. I mean, we've been doing this for a while now, and you want something quick to market, you can definitely leverage us. The differences here, really getting a taste of process automation is probably the Smart package. The Smart Plus is going into a bit more of data integration too as well. So like someone mentioned, I want to start making reports. That's when Smart Plus gets involved. And then Smart Elite is if you have a lot of business processes and you want to start doing some not only data integration, but some further integration into other applications such as Dynamics 365, etc. All right. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Steph. That's my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. And so we do have a couple questions that have actually been populating. Kushvel is asking, and I'm assuming that they're saying like once you've actually done the approvals and there's a pending approval, will it send an email notification or reminder to the people, I guess, that are requesting the information? So like if I'm Megan and I'm trying to send my approval through and, to my manager, does it send a reminder if my manager hasn't gotten back to me in a couple days?
Yeah, that's something that we can define on our, sorry, that's not a COVID cough or anything there. Definitely send a reminder and add that as part of your process, and you can define maybe every 5 days or every week or maybe every 1 day if you want to be that annoying. You can set that. In this case, you saw that it was a Microsoft team message that was sent. That's not the usual behavior. We had to change that in the workflow itself, but the usual behavior is to send out an email. But once again, there's a lot of flexibility and you can define that.
Gotcha. And then we've got a question here from Brian. He's saying, how much thought has to go into the folder structure in SharePoint in order to make this work?
That's a good question. When it comes to that, I'll kind of use Teams as an example. This is sort of like a philosophical question. We've seen that you can definitely uh, just kind of take what you have and bring it into there, but garbage in, garbage out. So the structure is very important, but you can take a look at it piece by piece. So if it's by department, maybe start with that department. I think the overall concept of everything that we talked about here, but also my personal philosophy has always been for a long time, plan, measure what 3, 4 times and then cut.
Mm,
It's really changing now though. I've gone into maybe measure once and then do a small little snip, right? And cut it one by one and kind of repeating that process. So yes, you should be, taking a look at your folder structure a bit, but maybe divide it up and start with one team first. Bring over finance maybe first, or maybe even a small subset of that. Maybe start with accounting, or maybe something smaller than that, depending on how big that folder structure is. But start
mm,
with that, bring that over to teams. Create a folder structure there and learn as you go. Don't be afraid to do that and slowly do that. And the other thing on top of that is, the type of people that are in working daily nowadays are used to certain applications. So to get them into these technologies, that's where you have to sort of do it piece by piece. So um, to answer your question very quickly, it's very important, but don't be afraid to do it in small pieces versus do it all at once.
okay. And we've got a question from Mario. He's asking, can we use Viso online with Power Automate to build workflows?
Sorry, Visio online?
Visio, I think. Yeah, sorry.
That's actually a good question. I would have to get back to you. I do remember I think the question is coming back from the old SharePoint. You were able to build Visio
Mm,
diagrams on premise and then import it into SharePoint Workflow Creator. I think that's why the question is coming up. And then now naturally Flow is like a continuation of that. I don't think that's possible, but I'll double check if they added that feature to Visio Online. And then we can get that out to him.
okay. Actually, Mario, if you wanted to email us at cloud@proservit.com, we can follow up with you after the webinar for sure. Okay, and then we've got another question here from Michael. Is all of the data collected stored in a SharePoint document library?
Sorry, say that again. The data
Is all of
collected.
the data collected stored in a SharePoint document library?
So this is another interesting question. Without getting too complicated, um, I am making my flow in the background do everything in SharePoint. So by default, there is no there's no central area. I know there's the common data service that kind of captures certain things, but you have to define where things go. So if it's a document, maybe it goes into SharePoint. If it's customer information, maybe it goes into Dynamics CRM, and you have to create those connections to put it in where it needs to go.
Got it. Okay. So, Michael, if you wanted sort of more clarification on that, you can either ask a follow-up question or email us as well. All right, folks, I'm not seeing a whole lot of other questions coming in at this time, and I am cognizant that we are approaching that 3 o'clock hour. So I think I'm going to bring the Q&A to a close for now. But if you did have any further questions about Teams automation, or if you are interested in getting started with one of our packages, or if you have any other questions about Microsoft Teams in general, you can feel free to reach out to us at oh my goodness, cloud@proservit.com, and we'll be more than happy to get those questions answered for you as soon as possible. But I think with that, I am going to say thanks again to you, Keith, for sharing your wisdom with us today, and thanks to everyone on the line for joining us for this webinar as well. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and we are certainly here to help however we can. So feel free, reach out if you need us, and we will definitely be happy to assist you in any way. So thanks so much, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe out there.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll talk to you soon.